So this airplane here is a Fairchild Razorback. This is the first type of plane built by the Fairchild company. And they were, at the time in the 1920s, extremely reliable aircraft. But they were called a Razorback because the back portion of the plane here has just one spar. And they found that in using the plane in rough terrain, this spar would sometimes snap. Right. Yeah, the pilot had a wicker chair right in this area here. And you can even see, like, these are some of the controls that they had for moving the control surfaces with wires and things like that ran through the wings.
Welcome back to Go at the Royal Aviation Museum of Western Canada. Once again joined by Davide. Pretty incredible what they actually put up in the air back in the day. I mean, to be a pilot, you would have to be a pretty gutsy person. Well,
yeah, certainly by our standards today, I mean, the planes behind us that we're restoring at the museum, these ones are made out of wood and out of cloth. And so, I mean, for me to think about it, I can't even imagine traveling in a plane made out of cloth. But I've been told by a lot of bush pilots that, I mean, that was available, what was available at the time. So they didn't really think much of it back in the 1920s and 30s.
And what's just as interesting here in your restoration area of the museum is that this is all done by volunteers, the restoration, right?
That's right, yeah. Our museum is a volunteer-driven organization. So actually the whole shop is managed and run by volunteers. We've got about 40 active volunteers in this area now. And most of these guys are retired aircraft engineers, mechanics, or pilots. And so they're bringing their expertise from their working lives back in the 1950s era, or earlier, later than that as well, and rebuilding some of these historic airplanes in the way they had been built originally.
Interesting. And if they were, were engineers, this is the airport that they would have been working in. We're standing in the old airport where people used to fly out of in Winnipeg.
Absolutely, yeah. This machine shop was the main mechanic shop for Trans-Canada Airlines when they got started back in the 1930s. I mean, this building was their original headquarters. So a lot of the work that they did testing airplanes, fitting them for cold weather, was done right here in this building and in this very shop.
And while it might be far from the case today, it was once one of the busiest travel hubs in Canada.
Absolutely, yeah. Winnipeg was chosen as the headquarters for Trans-Canada Airlines back then because the planes didn't have quite as much distance as they do today. And so Winnipeg is right between Toronto and Vancouver, so it made perfect sense for them. Every plane had to do a layover here, so they put their head office right here in this building.
Interesting. Now, I imagine for all the volunteers, for yourself, why is it so important to celebrate and talk about our flying heritage here in Canada?
Well, it's very important because it's really back in the 1920s, it's something that brought all Canadians together. We had, of course, the railway before that, but that just ran through the southern part of Canada. And airplanes allowed people to travel into the north and from the north down south again, trading furs at first, exploring for minerals after that, and of course providing food and all kinds of other things for communities, very remote communities up north still today.
And you guys can of course come down and check it out here at the museum. And in April, you guys, we talked about it early in the show, the early days of passenger travel. When are those tours running?
Those tours run all through April, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 2 p.m. and also Sundays at 2 p.m. And our happy tour guides will be glad to take you around.
Great. Thank you so much, Davide.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.